I told you never to come back here again. Look what you've done to this place. Get up!
Ethan Blackwood's private jet landed just before sunrise, the wheels touching the runway with a quiet firmness that matched his mood. The city was still wrapped in fog, buildings reduced to shadows, lights blurred into soft halos. He stared out the window longer than necessary, feeling something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Relief. The deal in Zurich had closed faster than expected, clean and decisive. For the first time in months, his schedule was empty. No emergency meetings, no late-night calls. Just home. He thought about Vanessa and imagined the way her eyes would widen when she saw him earlier than planned. He pictured his mother sitting by the living room window, tea in her hands, the faint smile she always wore when she thought no one was watching her. He didn't call ahead. He wanted the moment to be simple, real. Family didn't need preparation. The drive home was quiet. Streets were mostly empty, the city still half asleep. Ethan leaned back in the seat, watching familiar landmarks pass by, feeling strangely detached from the empire he had built. Business had made him powerful, respected, feared in some circles. But at that moment, none of it mattered. All he wanted was to walk through his front door and feel at peace. The mansion gates opened smoothly, as they always did, but something felt wrong the moment the car stopped. The house looked darker than usual. Normally, soft lights glowed from the windows, and classical music floated gently through the halls. His mother liked music in the early morning. It made her feel less alone. Tonight, there was nothing. He stepped inside, and the silence felt heavy, almost hostile. Before he could place why, voices cut through the quiet. Vanessa's voice came first, sharp and impatient. Another voice followed, weaker, trembling. Ethan's heart began to pound. He set his briefcase down slowly, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. He moved forward, steps careful, controlled. The closer he got, the clearer the words became. "I told you not to touch my things," Vanessa snapped. "You never listen. You're always making a mess." Ethan stopped at the doorway for a moment. His mind refused to understand what his eyes were seeing. His mother was on the floor, Margaret Blackwood, the woman who had worked herself sick so he could attend school, who had smiled through exhaustion and pain so he wouldn't worry, was kneeling awkwardly beside the sofa. One hand pressed against the marble floor, the other gripping her knee. Her silver hair had slipped loose, falling around her face. Her glasses lay broken nearby, the thin frame bent, one lens cracked. She looked so small. Vanessa stood over her, perfectly dressed, irritation etched into her face like she was dealing with an inconvenience rather than a human being. "Get up," Vanessa said. Margaret tried. She really did, but her body didn't move fast enough. Vanessa's foot struck her leg. The sound was dull and sickening. Margaret gasped and curled inward, instinctively protecting herself, confusion and fear written across her face. Something snapped inside Ethan. The world shrank until there was nothing but that image. His chest tightened so hard he struggled to breathe. Rage exploded through him, violent and overwhelming. His fists clenched. Every instinct demanded he rush forward, grab Vanessa, tear her away from his mother. But he didn't move. Years of discipline held him in place. Years of knowing that uncontrolled reactions destroyed leverage, destroyed truth. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone. He pressed record. Vanessa kept going, unaware, her voice dripping with contempt. "This is my house now," she said. "You need to learn your place." That sentence ended everything. Not the kick, not even the cruelty. That belief, that sense of ownership, that entitlement. Ethan knew with absolute clarity that the woman he planned to marry did not exist. Only this one did. Vanessa stormed out moments later, muttering under her breath, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. The sound faded down the hall. The silence afterward was unbearable. Ethan rushed forward, dropping to his knees beside his mother. "Mom," he whispered, his voice breaking despite every effort to control it. He carefully slid an arm beneath her shoulders. She flinched slightly, and his heart twisted. "I'm all right," she said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "She just got angry. I shouldn't have touched her things." Even now, she was protecting someone else. Ethan helped her onto the sofa and wrapped a blanket around her trembling body. Up close, he saw things that made his stomach turn. The bruise forming on her leg, the redness in her eyes, the way she hunched inward, as if trying to take up less space. "I sold my house so you could chase your dreams," she murmured quietly. "I never wanted to be a burden." Memories flooded him. His mother counting coins late at night, pretending she wasn't hungry, smiling when he succeeded, even when it cost her everything. "I'm so sorry," Ethan said. "I should have been here." She touched his cheek gently. "You did nothing wrong. You're a good son." That was when shock turned into something colder. Stronger. By evening, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a place where truth would be decided. Ethan sat across from his lawyer, calm and precise. Every detail was planned, every outcome considered. This wasn't revenge, it was protection. When Vanessa walked in later, confident and smiling, she had no idea that her life was about to split cleanly in two. Vanessa walked into the dining room that evening with the same confidence she always carried, as if the world naturally bent around her. She wore a soft smile, one meant to charm, to disarm. She glanced briefly at Ethan's lawyer, at the staff standing quietly near the wall, then back to Ethan himself. Her eyes searched his face for irritation, confusion, maybe even guilt. What she found instead unsettled her. He was calm, too calm. "Why is everyone here?" she asked lightly, pulling out a chair as if this were a casual meeting. "Is something wrong?" Ethan didn't answer. He stood at the head of the table, hands resting flat on the polished wood. The room felt tight, like it was holding its breath. Without a word, he reached for his phone and connected it to the large screen mounted on the wall. The video began to play. Vanessa's voice filled the room first, sharp and unmistakable. Then her image appeared, standing over Margaret. The kick, the words, the sneer, the cruelty played back without mercy, stripped of excuses and explanations. The room seemed to shrink with every second. One of the staff members turned away, tears welling in her eyes. Vanessa's parents, who had arrived moments earlier at Ethan's request, stared at the screen as if watching a stranger. "Turn it off," Vanessa snapped, rising from her chair. "This isn't what it looks like." Ethan raised one hand, stopping her without touching her. His face didn't change. The video continued until the very end. Only then did he turn the screen dark again. Silence followed. Thick, heavy. Vanessa laughed nervously, brushing her hair back. "She provoked me," she said quickly. "You know how she is, always acting helpless." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, not with anger, not with sadness, with something colder, final. "The engagement is over," he said evenly. "There will be no wedding." Her smile shattered. "What?" She looked around the room, as if expecting someone to laugh. "You can't be serious. My mother raised me alone," Ethan continued, his voice steady. "She sold her house so I could build my first company. She skipped meals so I wouldn't go hungry. Anyone who hurts her has no place in my life." Vanessa's mother opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her father stared at the table, his hands clenched. Ethan nodded once to his lawyer. The man slid a folder across the table. "Everything in this house belongs to Mr. Blackwood," he said calmly. "Miss Carter has no legal claim to any property or assets." Panic flooded Vanessa's face. "Ethan, please," she cried, stepping toward him. "I was angry. It won't happen again." Ethan stepped back. "You have 1 hour to pack your belongings. Security will escort you out." The words landed harder than any shout. Vanessa's sobs echoed down the hallway as she was led away. Ethan didn't follow. He didn't look back. Justice didn't need rage. It needed truth and action. That night, Ethan sat beside his mother until she fell asleep. He listened to her breathing, shallow but steady. Every so often, she stirred, murmuring apologies in her sleep, as if she still believed she had done something wrong. Each time, Ethan felt a fresh wave of guilt wash over him. The next morning, sunlight poured into the living room, soft and warm. Margaret sat by the window with a cup of tea, her hands still shaking slightly. Ethan watched her from the doorway, noticing how carefully she moved, how she hesitated before standing, as if afraid of making a mistake. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she said quietly without turning around. "You loved her." Ethan walked over and knelt beside her chair. "You didn't cause anything," he said gently. "You survived it. That's all." She reached out and squeezed his hand. "You came home when you were needed." That day, Ethan called his contractor. The marble floors were removed and replaced with warm wood. Sharp-edged furniture disappeared. Rugs softened every step. He ordered new glasses for his mother and insisted on accompanying her to the optometrist himself. He filed a police report, not out of anger, but necessity. The video spoke for itself. A restraining order followed. The house began to change. Slowly, gently, music returned. Flowers appeared on the tables. The tension that had lived in the walls seemed to fade. Ethan changed too. He canceled overseas trips and delegated more responsibilities. For the first time, he left the office before sunset. In the evenings, he cooked with his mother, awkward at first, laughing when he burned the rice or oversalted the soup. Margaret watched him with a softness that made his chest ache. Sometimes she told stories from his childhood, stories he had never heard because he was always busy chasing the future. Sometimes her voice trembled, sometimes she cried, and sometimes she laughed so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. One afternoon, as they sat together in the living room, she looked at him and said quietly, You didn't just defend me, you chose me. Ethan met her gaze. I always will. News of the broken engagement spread quickly. Some people whispered that Ethan had overreacted, that he had ruined his future over one mistake. When asked about it in an interview months later, he offered only one sentence. Wealth means nothing if it can't protect the people who sacrificed everything for you. He donated generously to organizations that supported the elderly and victims of abuse. Not for praise, not for headlines, but because he understood how easily suffering could hide behind closed doors. That I end the quiet evenings that followed. As Margaret rested peacefully nearby, Ethan understood something he had missed for years. Success wasn't measured by deals closed or empires built. It was measured by the courage to draw a line and the love to stand firmly on the right side of it.